And now for the instrument code and the music attacks. It's mostly just a few scripts, though there is quite a lot in these scripts. It's mostly just costume changes and sounds. This long script over here determines whether or not the player is crouching. If they aren't, it will then go to them, point towards the mouse pointer, and check what their direction is, and switch the costume accordingly. This is the costume for the script for when the object is facing the opposite direction, whereas this one is when the direction is pointing towards the right, and this one is for pointing towards the left. There's also this script, which is used to change the instrument type. And in addition to that, there's this, which will kind of determine what sound is to be played when the player is pressing the mouse key down. It only will activate this when mouse's position is within the boundaries of the stage, and will not activate if the player is ensnared or crouching. Over here is just movement script, which is almost identical to what the player has, except that it does not accelerate or decelerate. The only reason that it does not accelerate or decelerate is because there's really no need to, as the player is changing the x velocity variable accordingly. Similarly, this script, in addition to determining where the costume or the object needs to go, will also change it according to gravity, which again is the gravity itself is changed in the player over here, and as such, it does not need to be changed a second time. It changed here, so it does not need to be adjusted here. As for music attacks, this one uses mostly the same script. Again, it does not attack if the player is ensnared or crouching. It sets bounces to 0, which only applies for the electric guitar instrument, and all of them create clones and wait a certain amount of time. Movement speed, in addition to affecting the actual movement speed of the player, also will decrease the amount of time between when the player can attack. Movement speed itself is adjusted by a sprite that we'll get to later. These other scripts are mostly the same, just creating clones, waiting a certain amount of time, though the trombone has a much lower waiting period than everything else. The electric guitar, on the other hand, has technically the most, as you can only have one of it active at a time due to how the bounces variable works. And then over here, there are two, when I started the clone blocks, one of them only applies to the basically everything except for the Telekinesis Drum. And this first part only applies to the trumpet, as it's the only one that has multiple costumes. Telekinesis Drum behaves differently from everything else, so it has its own script here, where it sets its size down and then increases its size to repel attacks. Which, if we go to, say, the fireball, you can see that it is checking where is it? Oh, yeah. It checks right here if it's touching the music attack when its costume is 7, and it will then turn and kind of rotate a little bit more. It will sometimes change costume to this costume, which has, you can't really see it, but it has a purple outline, which signifies that if it hits the boss, it will damage them. Originally, the reflected attacks would not damage the boss or bosses, but I eventually added this because I felt it was a little unfair that deflecting attacks wouldn't really do anything. Fireball is the only, I believe it's the only one of the attack types that is, that has it's the only script that uses the pen, which was basically what the pen is doing with this is it's kind of following after the fireball as it kind of zigzags around, and sometimes it will create sort of a blockade for the player, but most of the time it will just go towards them and then just immediately go to the top of the screen. There's also a bunch of different broadcasts here, with each one being for a different attack. Infernal Catharsis is a reference to a song from the Calamity mod for Terraria, which is the source of the final boss theme as well. Infernal Fireballs is when Inferno uses his regular fireball attack. Fireballs is Enchantress fireball attack. Draw is Inferno's kind of like a drawing fireball attack. Inferno's Last Resort is pretty self-explanatory. It's the attack who just floods the screen with fireballs. The drum is very useful against that, by the way. And then Dragon Fireballs is when Inferno summons his Lava Dragon pet to shoot a bunch of fireballs. All three of the Icy Shard projectiles behave very similarly, with the only difference being which character is using them. B stands for Blob, which is the final boss. C stands for Cryo, and E stands for Enchanta. All of the projectiles except for Cloud all have a second costume with an outline, a purple outline for the drum. Murder Song was another reference to a Calamity mod song, and so is Antarctic Reinforcement. Now for the boss health bars. This actually took me a while to figure out at first, but I was able to get it pretty quickly. The way the health bars work is they are a certain amount of pixels wide, and the health bar insides are a lot small, or about the same size, and the reason that there is a colored object here is so that the boss health bar inside can hide behind it and give the illusion that the health bar is draining as you deal damage.